meetings to come here and to moderate this panel. I will start by giving two sentences of technical notes. Our panel will last until 11:15 in accordance with the program. Then we have a 15-minute coffee break. It's important to mention that we should not vacate the rooms until we leave, so there's no deadline at 12 a.m. So in 11:45 we will have lunch that for the colleagues that need to take early flights. So I think that I said all the technical notes. Today we have a panel on social dialogue, and we have 6 colloquiators. 4 of them are here with us today, and 2 will connect via Zoom. I will introduce them when I give them the floor. Yesterday we talked about important things on the 3 panels. The first panel was dedicated to the situation and the perspectives of the journey of the Western Balkans countries towards the EU integration. That was a very interesting panel, and it opened up many questions that influenced our work generally. On the second panel we talked about the COVID-19 pandemic and the consequences that it had on our economic and social systems, and we also talked about the so-called green agenda, i.e. the investments that the EU secured for this in this field, and those are significant opportunities that can cause transition in the region towards the green and the digital. What we as trade unions and social partners can do is to advocate for this transition and for it to be just. And there will be a transition in the way of production and providing services, but also the employees need to be ready to find other jobs. It's wonderful to buy a hybrid or electric car or to install a solar panel, but each such investment is much larger than to continue using the conventional sources of energy, and people wouldn't have the money to finance those investments themselves. Yesterday's panels were horizontally linked, and during today's panel we need to see how we will achieve those things mentioned yesterday and how we can involve our social partners in negotiations with the EU. Here in the room we have mostly representatives of social partner organizations from the European Union, and this whole list of panel members reflects that. So I hope that today we will be able to answer the issues how we can improve this. We will talk about the situation in the region, and I would want to get suggestions from the people present in the room and from those that will connect via video link about how to improve things. I will start by giving the panelists 5 minutes for introduction. That will use up half an hour if everyone sticks to the agenda, and then we will have a time slot for discussion, and the panelists can take the floor if they feel the need to say something, and after that they will have 2 or 3 minutes for closing comments and for answers to the questions that they will get in the meantime. And after that, at 11:30, after the coffee break, we will deal with the declaration from this meeting. Yesterday we mentioned the summit of the Western Balkans with the EU that will take place within the Slovenian presidency on the 6th of October. So we need to send our appropriate suggestions in a timely manner. So I would like to give the floor to my first panelist. I want to change these intellectual braces. That the first panelist is Emil Krstanovski. He's the national coordinator for the ILO for the North Macedonia. He is responsible for the efficient implementation of the agenda for decent work and for successful evaluation of ILO projects that take place in North Macedonia. So the floor is yours.
I would like to thank the organizer
invitation to the ILO to attend this panel. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, and I will continue my address in my mother tongue, Macedonian language.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is a complex crisis, a pandemic, and requires response from the whole society. Social dialogue is key instrument for managing such situations due to three reasons. By sharing information, we increase the quality of policies and measures that we are creating. Secondly, social dialogue creates inclusiveness and dedication to such policies and measures, which provides effective application. And thirdly, social dialogue helps to build the trust. Despite the unique nature of the crisis, there are lessons that can be drawn from previous crises that we have overcome. And that is, countries with experience with social partnerships and stable institutions of social dialogue have greater probability to establish, to formulate fast tripartite responses to the challenges that they face. Secondly, governments should include social partners the sooner, the better in managing the crisis, and social partners should be proactive. The countries from Western Balkan social dialogue manage social dialogue in a very challenging environment, and I'm not talking of the situation due to COVID-19, but a situation that was enduring even before the crisis. The crisis only emphasized the weaknesses existent in these countries. I would emphasize several of such weaknesses: the weakness of lack of trust among the partners, the lack of technical capacities with many of the social partners, so that they can crucially contribute for the policies and the measures that are being adopted, the lack of institutional mechanisms for monitoring the recommendations of the social and economic councils and evaluation of their influence on the national legislative processes. Still, despite of these weaknesses that were existent before the crisis, this crisis showed also the potential of the social dialogue, and in some cases it contributed for significant improvement of the image of some partners and certain councils. The crisis showed us that social partners which invest in the development of their own human resources were in a better situation and position during the crisis. They were agile and flexible and capable to influence national policies and measures by presenting solutions based on solid analysis. And even though the first reaction of most of the governments of Western Balkans was to fast response, neglecting the formal channels and institutions of social dialogue, very soon the situation changed from pressure from the trade unions and, in some cases, employers' organizations. In my view, we missed opportunities to build stronger partnerships partnerships and unity, but in cases when we use such possibilities and opportunities, we applied better measures for the benefit of many citizens. I would emphasize the example of the Economic and Social Council of Macedonia, which had an initiative to change the compensation for unemployment. And many citizens who lost their jobs with the first wave of the crisis had the opportunity to receive such compensation. Also, I would like to point out that the packages that you discussed and that were covered by the Council were accepted, admitted by the broader public, more than the packages that were agreed in a narrow circle within the government or by only a few employers. This would be my introductory part. I will later on again say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Emil. So, we got an introduction about the current state of the social dialogue in relation with the institutionalized tripartite dialogue with the Social Economic Council here in Macedonia. So that's a good incentive to have a discussion. We have colleagues present here that are from North Macedonia, and they will of course join the discussion related to the introductory speech given by our colleague Krstanovski. And now I would like to greet my colleague David Foden, who will address the conference via video link, i.e. via Zoom. He's a counselor for industrial relations in the European Foundation for Improving Living and Working Conditions, which we call Eurofound for short. As coming from the country that entered the EU last, which is Croatia, I can say that all of their reports were very useful in the whole process. But unfortunately, until Croatia became a full member, we weren't part of the research. That has changed now, and believe me, their research is of high quality and very important. So I'm glad that all of you that don't know about their work can hear about it firsthand. My colleague David used to work in the economic department of the Trade Union Congress of the United Kingdom, and then he transferred to the European Trade Union Institute, which is a very important institution for our members of trade unions, but it's also used by many professors and researchers from academia in the EU. Then he transferred to Eurofound, where he worked in many different positions. It's important to say that David manages the network of the Eurofound associates. That involves professionals and experts and scientists that contribute to this research and add to its quality and significance. So I suggest that David can proceed with his presentation. So David, the floor is yours.
And I hope you can hear me clearly. Thank you as well for the invitation. I'm sorry I can't be present physically, but the wonders of technology at least allow me to join you virtually. And I was asked to say something about developments in social dialogue and industrial relations in the EU in my 5 minutes, which of course is very brief for that. And I'm going to try to do it with the help of a couple of slides, if I can find them, which is always the challenge in this exercise. I can see my slides, but I suspect that you can't. Let me look if I can. Yeah, no. If I can't find them, never mind. I have sent them on, and perhaps they can be distributed afterwards, but I can say, I think, the messages which are in them anyway. Western Europe is often considered the home of social dialogue, and I think that certainly remains true in comparison to much of the rest of the world. But I think it's important to note that social dialogue and industrial relations are also under pressure in the European Union. And the first slide, which I was hoping to show you, was a summary of the some 1,000+ outputs or outcomes from the European level social dialogue in the 4 years, up to 2019. It's a little outdated, but of those 1,000+ outcomes, nearly all of them are what you could consider softer or less binding results. There are cross-industry and sectoral agreements, but they're only about 2 to 3% of the total. And so one question that's raised at the European level is how effective are the social partners in reaching binding commitments in the social dialogue? So that's just one thought for the European level. But the bulk of what I wanted to talk about was referring to national level, and really to refer to two issues, one being what's happened to trade union density, and the second, what's happened to collective bargaining coverage. And I have, unfortunately, you can't see them, slides on each of these. In terms of trade union density, I have a chart which gives the state of play in 2000, in 2014, and most recently in 2018. And to summarize, there has been a general decline, both from different starting points and to different degrees. Big differences also remain. But in the member states of the EU, also at that time including the UK, and also including Norway, there was an average decrease of about 11 percentage points between the year of 2000 and 2018. Particularly important decreases were found in countries in Central and Eastern Europe, Croatia, Hungary, Slovakia, Slovenia, and also in Southern Europe, Cyprus, Greece and Malta. The Nordic group of countries has maintained the highest density, but even here the decline is quite marked. Sweden, often seen as a strong example, experienced a drop of some 20 percentage points to 66% during that period. So trade unions under pressure pretty much throughout Western Europe. Then secondly, collective bargaining, and I think it's important to mention collective bargaining as a key form of regulation of the employment relationship and a more nimble one than legislation. It can provide protection for workers and a competitive level playing field, but also provide some flexibility to local conditions. Beyond that, of course, it provides some transparency and helps to make labour markets more efficient and effective, and it's a form of participation. And these are all, I think, important contributions. In terms of collective bargaining coverage, the picture is not quite so bleak as for trade union density. It has remained more robust. And in some countries, it has followed down the decline in union density, particularly perhaps in the Central and European countries, but it remains high in the Nordic countries, but also in what we think of as the social partnership countries of Benelux, France, Germany, and indeed in much of the if you like, the old EU, the EU 15, apart from the UK, Ireland and Greece. And what are the reasons for this? Well, I think one important factor is that employer organisation density has proved more stable than that of trade unions, and that has helped to maintain the relative resilience of collective bargaining coverage. But secondly, and I come to my conclusion on this, I think it's also important to think about the other institutional arrangements around collective bargaining. And these include not only issues about the level of bargaining, how centralised or decentralised, but also the institutional supports, such as extension procedures, the ways in which the different levels of bargaining relate to each other through the favourability principle or opt-out and opening clauses, and indeed what happens when collective agreements expire. Do their provisions remain in force upon expiry or not? And all these issues make a big difference in determining how far collective bargaining remains resilient, even if trade union density has declined. So I'll pause there, Chair. I think I've used up my 5 minutes. But if I come back at the end with some thoughts, I think they will be about what measures can be taken to support collective bargaining and help maintain it during the difficult period we live through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for your introductory statement. Thankfully, we were able to see the slides, so the graphic presentation and the breakdown by countries leaves a better impression. As they say, a picture speaks 1,000 words. It was very helpful, thank you. I hope you will get the presentation. This is the latest data, so they will be useful for the upcoming period. I have marked some questions, but I'll ask them during the discussion part. Our next speaker, Mr. Selvidin Shatorovic. He's the president of the Confederation of Independent Trade Unions of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's also vice president of the Trade Union Association in Bosnia. And he's part of the education union in Bosnia. I hope I listed everything. Thank you, Madam President. I would like to welcome all the attendees and to thank you for organizing this event. I expect this event to contribute to certain improvement of the accession process of the Western Balkan countries to the family named European Union, because we both geographically but also in every other way belong in that family, although we are not formally still members. Although they listed all of my job positions, don't think that there are a lot of good union people in Bosnia and Herzegovina. These issues are regulated by statutes, so there are still a lot of high quality people in trade unions who are trying to raise the level of social dialogue. The social dialogue should be, regardless if it's bilateral or trilateral, it should be based on mutual trust, confidence, and good intentions between the social partners. The trade unions were the first to accept the social dialogue. We sincerely started with this story. I compare it to a marriage that you enter with a lot of love, but then you have a partner who tries to cheat you or con you in some way, and if you're not paying attention to what they're doing and where they're going, it happens very often. So the status of social dialogue is definitely different from one country to another, depending on the political situation, on the current issues facing the countries in the WB6, but you know, this region is always turbulent, and certain things that concern to social issues, worker rights, are not in the forefront of issues. The trade unions and primarily workers managed to find solutions in this situation. We had the best solution. We gave recommendations, and in a way, we guided both the governments and employers on what to do in order to keep the system running. So the Confederation of Trade Unions of B&H determined that the growth of profit of pure profit in the employers in 2020 was higher than in 2019, and we need to thank the workers first because they sacrificed their health, the health of their families, and they were the forefront of keeping the economy running without high salaries. We didn't have proper partners on the side of the government, so proposals for amendments to labor laws in certain Balkan countries, where there were attempts through legal regulations to force the worker to work 72 hours a week for a salary lower than the minimum salary. Some people try to use this crisis to their benefit and not complying with the primary motives of the mutual trust, and did not try to reach a common goal. In this process, the trade unions are in the most difficult position. I will speak as the president of the trade union. The trade unions are in hard situation because the government has tools, have laws and bylaws, and they change things any way they like it. Employers have the capital, have the possibility through various mechanisms can create influence the public opinion, along with the good cooperation with the media, who meet every request from the trade union in a very bad way. What are they asking for? So we have a situation that where workers in the area of the Western Balkans cannot have a minimum salary of, let's say, 500 euros, while those same workers who leave and work, for example, in Luxembourg, could have a minimum salary of 2,000 euros. I think a lot can be done here. A lot of things can be approved, but we should use legal mechanisms, and we need help from the European Union for the other two social partners to be put in a position where they would approach the social dialogue with respect. Here we still have the situation where the trade unions are the only ones who accepted the social dialogue, and they have not much feedback, neither from their members, neither from the other two social partners. To be specific, when you agree on certain things, trade union members prefer a fight. They want you to show them that you're working in their interests, while through social dialogue, plus there is lack of respect from the other partners, it's hard to show anything to your members. So what is very important, unless some things change in the countries of the Western Balkans. We're going to lose the labor force. We're going to lose people represented by trade unions. Employers pay more benefits. No, they don't. The workers pay more. Workers earn their salaries, they earn their benefits, they earn the payments into the funds, and they earn the profit of the employers. So in general, the situation is not good. There's a lot of room for improvement. If that does not happen soon, I think the trade unions, unless something changes, the trade unions will be forced in this region to shut down, which may be the ultimate goal, because when you see the documents seen here, there is very few in very few places trade unions or collective bargaining is mentioned, which is not a good thing, because trade union is a good partner and the important partner in these processes. That will be all for me for now. Thank you, Sylvedin. He, in a way, brought up the fact that this health crisis, how this health crisis cascaded into other segments. So, and he pointed out the workers on the forefront of the crisis, starting from the healthcare workers and social workers, or our colleagues who work in retail, that were constantly open and they had contact with customers because they are somehow necessary. We read that in the UK is lacking 100,000 truck drivers, so the communication and the transport is interrupted, so goods and services cannot reach the citizens, which prevents having some kind of normal life in the country. So how will this be used for some kind of new approach or more equal distribution, as we spoke yesterday at the panel? Next speaker is Mr. Boško Savković, my dear friend. He's the Secretary General of the Serbian Association of Employers, so the Voluntary Employer Association. He's also the co-chair of the EU-Serbia Civil Society Joint Consultative Committee, our joint consultative committee. Boško and I, for 2.5 years, were vice presidents of that body, or co-chairs of that body, and it was an experience. Boško can tell us if there are any changes from that period when I was more involved in that body and when I handled the issues of the progress of Serbia towards EU membership. He's the Secretary General, but he's also the founders of this Association of Employers of Serbia. Since 1993, he's the director of the film production agency Alternative. He's a well-known Serbian writer and producer, and he graduated from international law in Belgrade. He worked as journalist, so he has a rich career. So we're going to hear from the employers. Thank you, Anna. I didn't know you were going to introduce me like this. I'm going to try to tell you some things about the social dialogue and the private sector. We have speak differently. I'll try to see the big picture. I'll focus more on Serbia, but I think as a mirror reflection, it's the same thing in the other countries in the Western Balkans. To be precise, I may have to read something, so I'll put my glasses on. The social dialogue in Serbia, there is no social dialogue in Serbia. Unless we see that 20 plus years ago we had something called Economic Social Council, but in these 20 plus years, not one decision of the Council brought by consensus was not included, not even in a bylaw. We haven't amended any laws, we haven't done anything. Even the minimum salary is out of our hands, it's in the hands of the government. We don't know what's the purpose of this body. We are like potted plants who are just for decoration. There is no social dialogue in Serbia. We have social blackmail. And the people still are subconsciously from the period of socialism think that they do not earn their salary, but they get it from the country. And that's a big problem in the philosophy on trade union organizations. In the past 11, 12 years, the labor minister is a doctor, then an ultra-leftist who supported the party of Mirjana Markovic, the wife of Slobodan Milosevic. This ultra-leftist brought the most right-wing law that you can imagine, and he's directly sold our workers to foreign investors, and he paid foreign investors to build factories and employ people, and they got subsidies for each subsidies. As a domestic investor, I cannot get those conditions. I cannot even negotiate with my employees because labor law said that you have to 51 representation in the industry in order to get the broader effect of the labor of the collective agreement. So Lekulic and I cannot negotiate because he doesn't have enough employees in his in trade union. I don't have enough workers, so we cannot negotiate it. Or if we negotiated, I would be in a much worse position than a foreign investor. These foreign investor, in the most refined manner, suppress the freedom of trade union organizations. They keep employees at 6-month contracts, so the workers are scared that they lose their jobs after 6 months. So the workers are working, they don't ask questions, they don't think about trade unions. Foreign investors does not want to include any employee organization. If he wants something, he'll kick the minister's door, say, I paid money in this country, and get what they want. Now this left-wing minister became the minister of the army, and then Minister of Army became the Minister of Labor. Now we have a situation where the Minister of Army is now the director of the post office, and the Minister of Labor is a lady who deals with viruses. How does the Labor Ministry have with viruses? Unless she looked nice during the crisis, she said she was cute. Derek knows nothing about the labor law or any conventions. But she deals with labor law. If you look at the situation from that point of view, you will realize that anyone can become Minister of Labor, and Serbia absolutely does not care at all what happens in the area of social dialogue. I think that's more or less in the same countries of the Western Balkans, correct me if I'm wrong. Another very important issue is the civil sector in the Western Balkans. We are all in a hostage crisis. All the civil society organizations include trade unions, association of employers, all civil society organizations are in a hostage crisis because of actions of our governments. Every country in the region is holding another country in a hostage crisis. Now Bulgaria is holding Macedonia a hostage due to language identity and so on. Serbia is interfering in Montenegro through the church. Croatia hasn't defined borders on the Danube with Serbia. Albania is affecting the situation of Kosovo. We are not going into details. We are all going in some kind of hostage crisis, and we're keeping each other tied up. This way of work in our countries does not contribute to the social dialogue. It does not develop the society. Our governments use money intended for non-NGOs to go to their promoters. We cannot hope to get that money because through those promoters they launder money and put into the system where they want. Real civil society organizations who apply to international funds and get money for their serious projects, all those organizations, from those working on the environment to free media portals, human rights, they are immediately declared by the governments as foreign mercenaries because and traitors because they get money elsewhere, and so the yellow press created by the government attacked them and called them names. They say that you hate Serbia, Bosnia, Macedonia, so on, and that's a fact. In all these countries, in the Western Balkans that we are speaking about today, there is no democracy. Forget that this has a stabocracy where the government is stable at any price. Stabocracy is a step away from autocracy. And as such, stabocracy, regardless of the consequences that it's going to have on our societies, it plays fine with a lot of players in the European Union. Through many years of decades of development, may reach democracy somehow, meaning we could get in the European Union and that's one of the basics of joining EU. But if we slip into autocracy, which are often forced by the actions of Brussels and the actions of our governments, if we get to autocracy, we will never join the European Union, or European unions will not exist on the Balkans anymore. As the president of the Serbian party of the JCC, as Anna said, in the past 4 years, I often could effect declarations where we could specify a situation with human rights and a rule of law and independent justice system, independent media, and so on. We spoke that the election process in Serbia is not free and fair. You may call it whatever it is, but it's not free and fair. By threatening to boycott opposition 2 years ago, finally the government admitted there are no free elections in Serbia, which is the basis of any kind of democracy. European members of the European Parliament came to negotiate on behalf of the opposition with the government. The act of the government, the government is negotiating about that issue, is recognizing that something is wrong, but I just want to conclude that after they left Serbia a few days later, they said that the Serbian election process is suffering from cancer, and then we got a medicine for that which was cough syrup. So these people left for Brussels and never came back. I've never been a member of a political group or party. I'm a free intellectual. I associate with free intellectuals from the Balkans and Serbia, and I know how we think. We are kind of an elite who have Europe at heart. We've been living the European values, and now we feel like European hostages. Europe will not sell our countries, they will sell us who have dedicated our lives to join the EU. Unfortunately, the red telephone that's solving this hostage situation in the Balkans is not in the hands of the people. It's in the hands of the people in Brussels, and they are to decide about the Western Balkans. All these issues about Macedonia, between Macedonia and Bulgaria, or Serbia and Kosovo, we know where that comes from. A few days ago, there were news that the Thessaloniki agreement is not valid. We appeal to our governments to do something, and Reuters said that there is nothing from the Thessaloniki agreement and that there is no guarantee that we will become members of EU. If you don't need us, tell us, be open. Let's stop hoping that our societies will join some European process in democracy. Once our generation leaves the political stage and the public stage, Europe will no longer exist in the Western Balkans. So I kindly ask you to do whatever we can to send direct message to our governments that they may not play with democracy. You cannot no longer tolerate what they are doing, and the stabocracy is not fine. Thank you very much.
Hvala.
Hvala ti, Boško.
Thank you, Boško. In his specific way and with details from everyday life in Serbia, Boško emphasized that it's very important to have a democratic environment for social dialogue. We cannot expect for the bipartite or tripartite dialogue to be a good mechanism for resolving relations between workers and employers if an environment doesn't exist that stimulates a democratic way of reaching decisions on social questions and that tends to social consensus. We all know that, and not just here in Southeastern Europe, but they fight that fight in the old democracies that are members of the EU, and they know that those fundamental rights always have to be defended and developed. As a trade union member, I would like to emphasize that the public servants are responsible for adopting regulations that will either stimulate or destimulate dialogue. The things introduced by Serbia prevent the trade unions in their core functions, which is the conclusion of collective agreements. We are mixing up models. There's an American model where all employees of a company say whether a certain trade union will negotiate on their behalf. And here we have with us a colleague from the ILO who can add to this discussion. And representation only deals with the trade unions that exist internally in the company. The number of employees that are members is not important. If such rules would be enforced in France, then there won't be any collective agreements in France at all. These are all things that we need to pay attention to, and it's important for our national governments to be responsible to establish a model that will stimulate collective bargaining and will stimulate better organization of both employees and employers, and that would raise collective negotiation and expansion of branch collective agreements in order to achieve a better coverage of employees. So thank you, Boško. And now we move to our colleague Edison Hoxha, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Work Relations in Albania. He's a lawyer and he's a specialist for employment law, for collective employment law. He is familiar with bipartite and tripartite social dialogue and the resolution of social and work disputes and conflicts. Edison is an experienced activist for labor law, and he's a member of the European network of trade union lawyers. This network was established by the European Confederation of Trade Unions, and he's a member of the network of lawyers from Southeastern Europe. So please, Edison, you have the floor.
I'm going to speak in Albanian, so thank you.
Hello to everyone. It's a special pleasure for me for being here in this panel. I will speak about social dialogue. Please allow me that firstly to start my discussion, my presentation with the European integration process and civil society organization and labor union organization. Albania and all the Western Balkans are in a very important process of European integration. Albania and North Macedonia are at the same level, while Serbia and Montenegro are a bit ahead, while Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina are behind. Albania, regardless the fact that we are in a moment when there is still no negotiation in the process, they are still not opening negotiations for chapters. They established institutional structure for EU integration. Civil society organizations or civil society and professional organization can contribute in this process through two mechanisms: consultative or dialogue, who are established on behalf of Albanian Parliament, and line ministries, according to the topic they cover. So, on behalf of Albanian Parliament, there is a European Council for Negotiations, which includes civil society organization, union organization, and they discuss on general level the process related with European integration. While on behalf of each line ministry, respective ministry, a platform has been established, interinstitutional, for discussion for integration issues for each chapter, where they discuss, or when different kind of organization of civil society, unions, professional organizations who have interest for each respective chapter. Civil society and interest groups contribute regarding European Commission progress report, who is published every year for Albania. These are conversations who have been open and transparent. We as organization have been active, and we were part of these platforms. And also we have tried to encourage all the other stakeholders, all other organizations with which we cooperate, to be part of these platforms. Regarding then we have to see how it would work in the future. This is only the initial phase, when it needs to be underlined that all organizations who have interest for different topics, especially for the labor organization, chapter 19 and chapter 2 of integration process, but other chapters as well, they need to be part of these platforms. Then how much they will work in the future, we will see during the process. Of course, the social dialogue is a very important instrument for social peace, because it provides sustainable development. Regarding the Albania case, we need to be much more engagement and much more commitment to reach the desired level in the beginning of the negotiation process with European Union. Social dialogue in Albania, but as other colleagues stated, generally is not developed, and with few encouraging developments. The reasons why is this so, according to us, are two main ones. The first is a passive role of the government for encouragement of a social dialogue. And the second, social partners are not organized in an efficient way to impose this dialogue of the process. Nevertheless, there are some positive experiences. I will underline in brief only a few of them in a general way. The criteria of the representation have been established for the highest organ of social dialogue in Albania. Nevertheless, the consultative process was not completely transparent and open. There were consultations, but we think that it needs to be much more public and transparent than it is. Nevertheless, the National Council of the Labor, the highest organ of social dialogue in Albania, has has ended the mandate and the new council has not been launched. There are negotiation offices which are only formal, with a lack of the trust from the social partners. A structure has been adopted which deals with a social dialogue in the Ministry of Labor. It has been improved, to better say. Nevertheless, the change is not sufficient because we need a better organizational structure and on special ministry level for labor. On the other hand, there is no government structure on state level which will coordinate on political level all the institutions of labor. There is no political structure on national level who will coordinate, although the law prescribes it. The offices for reconciliation or negotiations are not efficient. They have no trust among the social partners and workers. Social dialogue in the local level, at the local level, is not established yet, is not launched yet, even not formally, although this should happen in 2016 in accordance with labor law of Republic of Albania. The government is completely passive in the social dialogue process. This can be seen in the third mandate of this government. There is 1 month of the from the beginning of the third four-year mandate. There is no special Ministry of Labor, which will be special for labor. Meanwhile, there is the special minister for entrepreneurship. Okay, it will be better, it will be for entrepreneurship and social dialogue, for example, because at least formally they should include the social dialogue within this ministry. At least the formal part should be added, but there is a special ministry for entrepreneurship. It was so 4 years ago in the previous mandate. It continues to be this way in the third mandate of the current government. I said previously, there is no special structure of political level to report and to coordinate social dialogue policies. The access of or attitude of a government in social dialogue, social partners, is negligible, at least we think so. The labor, I will say, is diminished in a peripheral structure of Ministry of Finance and Economics. From the work of the government, we don't think that they consider the unions, that they openly say that they are not existing, they are missing. Social partners, we think that they are not well organized to impose the functioning of the social dialogue in the central level and or company level or sectoral level. Although we can mark some positive attempts, for example, in the oil sector, in the mining sector, telephone or telecom operators, or educational sector, who has a long tradition in a union organization, which need to be greeted. There are some other sectors, but these are the prominent ones. There is an acute need, urgent need for supporting the social partners, especially in the company levels or sectorial levels, in order to raise their capacities or their organization. Or the collective agreements, although it is reported in a good level, it's only a formal and only as a result of the law. The concern are the unions on direct influence of the employers. The safety and the health of the work is a positive. The legislation is positive, and generally speaking, in accordance with the ILO standards and EU standards. The problem is the implementation in the law and the sub-law. This is a main concern. The prevention from the state is insufficient. the healthcare system in the company is insufficient. As a main challenge, to conclude my discussion, I will mention implementation of the legislation in the practice remains a huge challenge for all of us. The inclusion of the labor organization in the labor market, and not in the active way, not formally. Strengthening the capacities of social partners to impose the social dialogue, not only to wait for the institution, because we will wait too long. Many years will pass, and we will discuss the same again as we do today. Thank you very much.
Hvala Edisonu.
Thank you, Edison. Edison just reminded us of our aches related to the tripartite social dialogue. After each election, we have a problem that the new government has to learn the problems dealing with the tripartite social dialogue. And that is the thing which we in Croatia constantly emphasize to the representatives of the EU. The local government should receive funds from the EU to strengthen the capacities for social dialogue. We always have funds from the EU to increase the capacities of the social partners, but in relation to the social dialogue, the government doesn't have sufficient capacity. That's serious work, and if we want to do it, we have to have serious capacities in all three sides. And I would like to give the floor to our final member of the panel, that's Mira Vejzagic-Ramshorst, who will join us online. Ms. Ramshorst is the team leader of the Platform for Employment and Social Issues for Western Balkans. The acronym is ESAP2. It's an extension of a former program, and we'll hear about it from Ms. Ramshorst herself. She's a member of the Council for Regional Cooperation, or RCC. The project is financed by the EU, and the main beneficiary of this RCC part of the project are the Ministries of Labor and Social Issues and the employment agencies of the Western Balkans 6. Ms. Ramshorst is a PhD. She got her PhD title at the University of Sheffield, and prior to that she got an MBA in Harvard, and prior to that she got her diploma at Cambridge. She also worked at USAID as a program manager. She also worked for the British Embassy in Sarajevo and the International Rescue Council. So she's a person with experience in different positions. So Mr. Ramshorst, please, the floor is yours. Good morning. Can you hear me?
About the tone.
Yes.
Everything is okay.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Milicevic-Pezel. It is great honor and pleasure to join you this morning. I have to say, I wish I was there in person. COVID has brought us this innovation of technology, and I hope that on the next forum I will be there in person. And again, honored and pleased to be on this panel. Definitely seeing our partner in this project, ILO, but also seeing the social partners with whom we also work. Chair Pezel noticed that we work with the ministries and the public employment services, but we also work with social partners. I come and represent the Regional Corporations Council ESAP project. And one of the first questions that I heard this morning that Chair posed is, what can be done so that the situations are enhanced, so things are improved? And if I can say, our biggest contribution is really to create a network, a platform in the region for people to learn from each other and exchange experiences. And so obviously I don't speak from the position of social partners like the speakers before me, but from a project. But again, our key role here is to connect everyone and to try to share best practices and experiences. I was also asked by the organizers to give a bit of an overview, a more general overview of the labor markets and social affairs, not just to focus on social dialogue. But in the interest of the time, I'm probably not going to go into details, but I'll just put one or two figures out there. When we look at, for example, the employment rates in Western Balkans, the average for Western Balkan is about 50%, and the average in the EU is 67. So we see a significant gap there. But what we also don't see when we look at these numbers is a big gender gap, and a much bigger gender gap in the Western Balkans than in the EU. The gender gap in the Western Balkans in terms of employment is about 18%, and in the EU it's 10%. So this is all the talent of women and their contributions to economy that are basically not leveraged for growth and for outcomes. If you look at the youth, the challenge is also there. Youth unemployment rates in the Western Balkan about 35%, and we look at the EU average about 16.8%. And as we know, COVID has only made things more, all these challenges even more accentuated, and these numbers are coming under more and more pressure. Also, when we look at the informal economy, undeclared work, in the Western Balkans, it ranges from 20 to 30%, and in some economies, even in some Western Balkan economies, even higher than 30%. So again, not to make this a broader presentation on numbers, but we see that all of these numbers really tell us that there are development challenges that need to be addressed through better dialogue, definitely social dialogue and partnerships with civil society, with the government, with the private sector, with social partners. What we're trying to do as a project is to connect these different nodes in the network, and also to connect among the Western Balkans and share practices and learning. For example, under the undeclared work, the component that we work, which is tackling the informality in the Western Balkans, which we work together with our partner ILO, we have established the Western Balkan network that looks at how to tackle undeclared work that includes social partners. So we're looking at solutions that are going to engage and enhance the dialogue between the government partners, but social partners, how to tackle informalities. And here we're also linking it to our EU peers and partners. Speaking of some of the earlier things that I have heard the speakers say, like work-life balance, occupational safety and health, social dialogue, minimum wage. Let me just again say what we're trying to do in terms of our contribution. We are focused on the Western Balkan alignment on the European Pillar of Social Rights. Most of you, I'm sure, have heard about the European Pillar of Social Rights. It is central to the EU social agenda, but it also, in my view, should be central to the Western Balkan social agenda. And it's also part of the EU accession processes in all of the 6 Western Balkan economies. What we are doing as a project is we are assessing progress of each of the Western Balkan economies against the pillars of against the pillar of social rights. As we know, this is a complex pillar with 3 pillars, 20 targets, headline indicators, and many of them are actually very much related to the social dialogue. Work-life balance, occupational safety, health, social dialogue, minimum wages. So as a project, we are mapping the situation in all of the 6 Western Balkan economies against the framework of the European Pillar of Social Rights. And we will be publishing these reviews in about 10-12 days on October the 12th. So I invite all of you to look at these, and we will be presenting them and live streaming them at our webpage and our YouTube channels. So this is an opportunity for us to look at how each individual Western Balkan economy is doing, but also compare and exchange lessons.
Ms. Ramko, sorry, could you speak a little bit slower?
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I always forget about the translation.
My problem too.
My apologies to the translators. So as I said, we will be looking in October and launching the 2021 review of all the Western Balkan economies against the European Pillar of Social Rights. So this will give us a chance to see and take stock where each of the economies are in terms of some of these important issues that have been mentioned, such as the social dialogue, work-life balance, occupational safety, health, minimum wage, gender equality. So I invite you to visit our webpage, look at our YouTube channels. We will be streaming live thanks to technology, and again, speaker before me, Mr. Hoja, mentioned the importance of Chapter 2 and Chapter 19. This is also something where we are involved, and we've established an informal network connecting negotiating teams or staff where we don't have the negotiation teams in place in 6 Western Balkan economies in an informal network to exchange experiences. So I think I've spoken probably longer than slotted, and definitely faster than planned. But if there is one message that I can say is that we're here as a platform to advance cooperation on issues of jobs and social dialogue and social affairs and more broadly. So I invite you to reach out to us if you haven't already been in touch with us, and see how we can work jointly together to improve and contribute to the Western Balkan economies on these important issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ramhorst. Thank you for explaining how much the cooperation, not only within the region and between the people who are dedicated to the issues in the region and are involved in other networks that we have established, that exchange of experience and knowledge, I think it is very useful. I would like to hear from other colleagues who are here how helpful it is to them. I always point out the cooperation between of the trade union of Slovenia, who joined the EU before us. I come from Croatia. They were always ready to help us with certain issues so that we wouldn't have to lose time and look at our capacities. It is not good to know who to call, who to contact, who to exchange experiences with. That's my personal experience, and I hope that my colleagues find it useful. We heard from all 6 panelists. I would like to open the discussion. We started a bit late, and we have to finish in time, and we have to comply with a break for the interpreters. I would like to ask the panelists if they have a question or would like to give a comment. We may skip the final comment of the panelists, but we'll see how the discussion goes. I hereby open the discussion. Please open. Just introduce yourself before you speak, so that everyone here and our online colleagues can know.
Good morning. My name is Mila Boshkov, part of the social partnership with limited influence Business Confederation of Macedonia Association of Employers. Since the discussion of this panel is the main topic is the social dialogue state of affairs in the Western Balkans, I'm glad to inform you and to establish the state of affairs that social dialogue is so important in Macedonia, as it was stated, that no member of the Economic and Social Council is not present here today nor online to hear the debate and to listen to the constructive recommendations and suggestions from the remaining social partners and council. So this is the first thing. And the second is, in the panel discussion, you mentioned that, yes, cooperation is important. It is important to share experience and knowledge. And we established the state of affairs that the social dialogue is solid, that there is room for improvement, that it is built on trust, built on the notion and idea of improving the technical capacities of the social partners and the monitoring mechanisms. On the other hand, social partners, at least those that do have the capacity to assess whether there is room, whether there is impact, and whether sometimes time should not be wasted on participating in social dialogue or creating new policies, etc. especially given the fact that a social dialogue is viewed in the sense of social policies. Mr. Safcovic had a good point stating social dialogue or economic social dialogue should not be a social blackmail. And in our case, with the assistance for the companies for tackling the COVID crisis, if it was even social loan, because a large number of the companies should repay the funds received as assistance. And this was not negotiated through the Economic and Social Council, nor was it negotiated in a concrete and specific dialogue between the employers, the workers, and the government. There were good contributions from the panelists. You as a chair, you mentioned that when it comes to economic and social or any crisis, that it is indeed the workers are on the front lines and the first who suffer. You mentioned the transporters, the drivers, and the companies in the UK. 100,000 jobs lost. Do you believe that this is a consequences of lack of social dialogue, or a political decision of a country putting in danger the social, the economic, even the standard of life, even the political reputation worldwide, bearing in mind that it is one of the leaders, global leaders, political leaders? So the capacities of the social partners nor the social dialogue helped in this regard, even though they are strong in the UK. On the other hand, we in our country, regardless of the appeals of the transportation organizations, we still do not have the center for issuing transportation licenses. This center is not operational yet, especially because of the fact that there is corruption and the leader of this center is in prison. So where is the transparency and social dialogue here? In terms of the monitoring of the economy in the country, we can be thankful to the NGOs, and it is good that they are part of this Economic and Social Committee, because they monitor corruption, they monitor public procurements, they monitor the developments of the economy. We have think tank organizations that assist us in certain aspects. However, social partners, as you said as well, have their own personal and organizational agendas in terms of establishing representation in social dialogue and participation in social dialogue. We have a closed circle of participation and representation. We have addressed the ILO a number of times for this, but still the representation in labor law is established, and the committee is established from the same members that are part of the Economic and Social Council. So they themselves establish the representation. Let alone for micro businesses or other trade unions, the access is totally non-existent. They have no access to this at all, because personal interests are being followed and realized. On the other hand, one more aspect. So while we're holding this conference talking about social dialogue, so especially in our country, labor legislation is the most relevant in this topic. 20 days ago, we had people burning and a hospital burned down, modular hospital. So they were burned because there was fate, or they burned due to bad policies, health and safety policies. The Minister of Health mentioned that they should be registered at COVID death cases, not due to the fire. So when we talk about social partners and responsibility, we need to, all of us need to be responsible. Nobody from the government is a member of the Economic and Social Committee, let alone in the employers' associations. The Economic and Social Council we do not consider it as Economic and Social Council. We expect to talk about financial or fiscal transparency, the budget, investment, corruption, tax policies. So on the other hand, 15 years ago, we only had one person registered who is supposed to lobby before the MPs, who is supposed to state that the policies should not be dealt with only within the Economic and Social Council, etc., that the citizens should also know, and the citizens' organizations should also be informed. There is one person, a gentleman that I know and I respect. A couple of years ago, we together established that the social dialogue in Macedonia is even worse than it was during the war crisis. And I remember that we talked about this, that it is even worse than it was during the war in 2001. Another thing, I obviously exhausted my comment.
Can give the floor to others, and then you can go back to it later. Ranka Bešić, take the floor. Thank you. Hello, I'm Ranka Mišić, president of the trade union of the Republika Srpska and member of the trade union of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And one of your panelists is representative of this trade union. I try to very carefully listen to all of you yesterday and today, and I will try in another way to say a few important things that we think and my organization finds them important. But first, it's important to say that when we speak about the Balkans and Europe, one of the countries is one of the unhappiest and most undesirable countries in Europe for living and working. It's a country under protectorate. It does not have political will to elect its representatives and for them to be accountable for what they do or don't do. It's hard to compare with any other country because that kind of form of organization of in any country does not exist, not in the modern world. It's a matter of a different discussion. Let me say this. Yesterday and today we have we have a person who sits here and has an average worker with average education would be very confused by this discussion. Maybe that he would try to understand, but it would be difficult. All of us, all of the panelists yesterday and today, we say that everything we do for the people, for a democratic society where everyone would feel relatively comfortable. We could do our job and live free, think free, be creative, create new values. That's at least how I saw it. However, just an illustration that I found fascinating. I heard it yesterday, and I will try to point out the problems in the social dialogue. One of the panelists yesterday said that when speaking about the environment and dirty technologies and how to transition to the green technology, what to do with people who lose their jobs, he said that yes, they mine coal, but that worker gets some of that coal, then he resells them and thus encourages other people to use dirty technology. It's not a problem that the worker got coal, it's not a problem that he sold it, but that's the consequence. But where's the cause? Why did the worker need that coal? Why did he sell it? Because he works for 300 euros or less. I'm speaking about coal mines as an example, as an illustration, but we can apply it to just about any job position from my country. I'm not speaking about other countries. This is just an illustration. What do I want to send as a message? What can that worker expect from social dialogue? Does he recognize social dialogue as a protection, as the opportunity to act for social action, so that his salaries, his life could reach a level of a dignified human being? No. What is characteristic for my country is when we speak about social dialogue, the government is not the issue. You can talk with the government, you can agree on something. Republika Srpska adopted the anti-mobbing law, which was a product of a bipartisan agreement, not three-partisan agreement. Employers negotiate separately for the government, and they get a lot more than when employees and when workers do. I would like to open this issue. The governments are not good. They have power that we do not have, and we gave them that power. So, if we gave them that power, then we have to ask the question: why are they like that? But what the employers and trade unions, why is there no dialogue there? No one spoke about that. Employers in Republika Srpska have minimum capacities, but they are very powerful. They can make the government do what is necessary, what is good for them, but only for a few employers. Can we do something to strengthen the capacities of employers and trade unions, meaning so that they can be responsible negotiators who can agree on something it's in common interest to increase the capital and the employees to get a better salary, better living conditions, and contribute more when it comes to the capital. The employer is in the Republic of Srpska tell us we don't need we don't need a trade union. Why should we negotiate with you? This is my company. I'm the boss here. I need the government, and that's it. We have workers. We can use migrants who will work for a lot less and won't ask any questions. So the fact is that social dialogue informally, yes, it exists, and there's some slight incentive to keep it alive, but there is no agreement between the key players, employers and trade unions. Then the government comes. Since you could not agree, we have no choice but for us to offer a solution, and finally, ultimately, that's how it's done. Why is it like that? Why don't want employers negotiate? Why do not want collective agreements? Where is the fault? How can we clear them, and how can we make that step forward to reach some kind of result? And there is a very good reason why we need help to succeed. We are losing people. People are leaving Bosnia and Herzegovina. I don't want to speak about other countries, but whole families, the best ones, the young ones, the most productive, the most educated, and they do not come back. They leave a vacuum. The social funds will go down. We are going to have a disaster very soon. I want to ask you that for a country that's not even a candidate for EU membership, I understand why it is important to us to get that kind of support to strengthen the capacities of both parties. I can see a solution between trade unions and employers, because that eternal conflict between the capital and labor will force them to agree on issues. I hope you understood. I tried to be simple. The example about coal wasn't something anything personal. Just I wanted to show that what's the situation. Thank you, Ranka, especially because you raised attention that the development of social dialogue is the basis for high quality three-party negotiations and agreement. A lot of we spoke about this social dialogue and the government as a third party, but three-party negotiations are important because we, as trade unions and police, we are always here, regardless of elections. And elections should not disturb the three-party agreement. And collective agreement should be an instrument that's good for both parties. Employers who are deeper in this topic and who use the collective agreement as an instrument are employers association in construction. 25 years we've been signing a collective agreement, but employers realize that a collective agreement is a more flexible document than a regulation. You don't need the government, you sit down with the trade union, you sit down and you can make the conditions better or worse. As it was the situation during the financial crisis in 2008 and now, that's something we need to pay attention to. We don't have time to go deeper. We have two speakers. I'm giving you 1 minute, Sergeant Kekovic and my colleague, I don't know your name. Thank you. Just very briefly. We received a lot of specific and interesting information, but I just want to speak about my colleague Boško, and I agree completely with him that when it comes to the process of accession of WB6 to EU, it's turning into a farce, and the keys are held by someone in the Brussels, and I agree. You should tell us, do you need us or not? But I think strategically that Europe without peace in Balkans cannot be stable. That's one thing, as Boško said, and Mr. Foden also spoke about that. The rate of trade union membership is dropping everywhere, not only in the West Balkans where the situation is drastic. This is going on in developed European countries, and that's a consequence of neoliberalism. I will focus on the Western Balkans. I'm happy to see in the final declaration that in item 36 this is mentioned, why we don't have a good social dialogue in the Western Balkans. We don't have a developed culture of social dialogue, and we cannot develop it unless we incite the employers to have trade unions, to have a social dialogue, and to undergo collective bargaining. How can we make them through interest? The government has to adopt mechanisms to reward employers who have social dialogue and have collective bargaining, and to differentiate them from the others, to motivate them to go into that story because they are motivated by interest. Naturally, I'm happy that this was recognized in item 36 of the declaration. And thank you, Sergeant. As you and Ranka said, as a regulation prescribes something, let's say I'm using labor law in Croatia, there could be on maximum 180 overtime work. You can only have 180 overtime hours annually by law, but 250 through collective agreement. So that is something that the collective agreement could benefit from the collective agreement. So some employers in Croatia have done this because things can be negotiated to be more flexible than the regulations, and that's because we are present in the countries as trade unions and make sure there is no abuse of the regulations. We have to be aware that that's an instrument that's not in the interest of the employees only, as perceived by the public. That's a collective agreement, something that workers want, the employers don't need it. No, they do need it, but we haven't developed the instrument enough. The other colleague.
Good morning, all representatives of trade unions. My name is Goran Viskov. I'm representative of the Confederation of Trade Union Organizations in Macedonia. Ms. Ranka, I'm one of those workers that you mentioned that expect to improve the conditions of life and work. So I'm going to talk about our country, but the situation is similar in the entire region. So social dialogue is practiced in our countries only on a surface level or at the level of confederation at the top level, and three-party dialogue, because this is a condition in the accession process. If it were not, if it wasn't a precondition, it would have been non-existent whatsoever. On the other hand, workers in the region, so we are talking about social dialogue, collective bargaining, etc. This is just a mere document that may or may not be applied, so the collective agreement, but there is an essential difference. Workers in the region are not involved in co-decision making. There is no institutionalized form of social dialogue. So only the Economic and Social Council is one form of formalized social dialogue. But we do not have a social and economic council for the sector of railroads, for example. Emil knows this very well. That's why he's smiling. On the another thing, I agree with the social partner business Macedonia to enter this Economic and Social Council. The only condition is to have a large number of people. We have 7% in the private sector, a trade union organization. What a large number or large scale participation are we talking about here? Maybe we are the only organization to succeed, even after the democratic changes in 2016, to impose ourselves and to be accepted into Economic and Social Council, even though we are not a sufficient number of people, but we are relevant. Other criteria should be taken into consideration as well. You can Google Marian Ristevski, and you can see how many hits you have, how many articles you get, and type other people a part of trade union organizations and make the comparison. Croatia and Slovenia did a good job. They used the resources of the companies, of the government, so the trade unions use this in order for them to be operational. So we have a situation when the employers use the profit of the companies in the private sector. The government uses the budget for their own interest, what they do not want to approve, and we only have the membership fee at our disposal and some technical assistance coming from the EU. But nobody will finish our job and finish our task. Yes, these EU funds or organizations may help, but it is not sufficient. So I'm trying to cover all my points fast. So you cannot go that fast because the interpreters cannot do their job. Well, we have a couple of other speakers. Item 36. From the declaration. The declaration will be covered in another panel. Please. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Agim Shaini, the president of Alliance of Kosovo Business Organization and Economic Social Council member of Kosovo, from which is not working from the current government. Ministry of Labor and Social Policy does not work as well, which has a constructive role in the past. That's why the social dialogue in Kosovo is a big question where it has to. I see here that the presence of the unions from Kosovo is not but we are the employers here, because we respect, regardless the fact that there is no collective agreement in Kosovo, we respect the labor law and the workers' rights. And in this regard, Kosovo and Kosovo entrepreneurs are leader in the Western Balkans for respecting the workers' rights. The Social Economic Council, which has functioned until the last year, is composed from the workers, from the employers and the government, has created many times recommendations, basic recommendations for the rights of the workers and the employers. There is in Kosovo, in no other Balkan country, there are no satisfied workers if there is not a healthy business environment. That's why the government needs to be focused on the creation of sufficient functional economic policies, and at the other hand, the entrepreneurs needs to respect the workers from which we are making money from their work. If there were no workers, we could not earn money in our business economy. That's why the dialogue in the Western Balkans has no good tradition regarding these issues. So the state institutions, regardless the country which we represent, they have more respect in the organization of the entrepreneurs who are close to the ruling political parties. They are not perceiving from the opinion as a partner, but as an opponent. So in Kosovo, the partners of the employers or the partners of the unions, the current government perceive them not as a partners, and they dismissed the Social Economic Council. We have the law for a Social Economic Council, and according to the law, it's working. It is, but with the new government, we had we didn't have any one meeting with the new government. We had meetings with the previous government, which has been finished last year, 1.5 years ago. So I think that together, all of us, because the Western Balkan governments are sensitive when it comes to a requirement from these institutions as we are here, in order to ask the government of Kosovo why a Social Economic Council does not work. It needs to be functional according to the law. Thank you very much for having time to listen to me.
Thank you. Together we can do more. This is the last speaker.
I represent the Albanian employers. A requirement, this forum of CSOs, and the role of social partners is minimized. The government of Western Balkans have been minimized the social dialogue. They don't recognize. Please, European partners, don't make this. We need to say 8th or 9th forum of CSOs and social partners. This is the project declaration, which says that CSOs and social partners, in we discuss all the employers' representatives are okay. We need to include the social partners. They create economy, and in the end, you say CSOs and civil partners. I think that in the 9th forum of CSOs and social partners to be the next forum. Not that we want to give an added value of important social. We need to differ things. We need to. Thank you. I don't want to last any longer. Very
much. Another minute for the panelists.
Thank you all. But with some of your comments, but I do not agree with some of your comments. So Mr. Boshko and his view that social dialogue is an expression of the society where we live, and the democratic societies have a more developed social dialogue. I believe that social dialogue should be treated as a public good that is in the heart of democracy. However, I believe that there are certain issues that social partners and governments should focus on in order to improve social dialogue. That is, first of all, to increase political support to social dialogue, including the public authorities at the highest level in the bodies of social dialogue, which would enhance the credibility of the decisions made. Also, some of the issues raised should be addressed. The idea of representation and participation in the social dialogue, and an equally important issue that social partners should continue investing in their capacities above all human resources, and to involve a large number of participants and members, and in their skills and capacities. These are the main points that I can cover in only a minute.
Thank you, Emil. That was very useful. Now I give the floor to David. Maybe after this discussion he could give us some recommendation on the basis of his experience.
Much. I think in 1 minute, perhaps, and especially in view of the kind remarks you made at the beginning, Chair, when you referred to our research, I would underline the importance of having data and having research available to understand what's happening in the Western Balkans. And for Eurofound, we would love to be able to contribute and help support that process. Our regular budget cannot be spent on that. It has to be spent in the EU member states, so we can't monitor developments using our regular budget. But sometimes funds become available for us to work outside the EU, and we have in the past, for example, included some Western Balkan countries in the surveys we do on working conditions, or our company survey, or our survey on quality of life. And I would hope that in the future we're able to do that again. And so perhaps one
dialogue, but also for all other things that go on in the Western Balkans. So thank you. The problem is that in the electric production company in Serbia, the salaries are the highest in Serbia. They are 1,500 euros very easily. Thank you, Voshko. You really stuck to your allotted time. So, Edison?
I think that the challenge for all of us is how to transform this dialogue in a formal mean or instrument or tool which will be efficient, how to make efficient the social dialogue. This is a challenge for all of us, and this challenge requires engagement of all three parties. Two-party dialogue is extremely important, but we have to have in mind that in countries like Western Balkans, we have a static culture, so to say, and we expect a lot, we wait a lot from the state. The state must have an active role in this process, because if the state does not have this role, it's extremely important to have an efficient dialogue, two-party dialogue, as it happens in the Western European countries. I want to underline the important active role of the country. I speak about objective, active role for supporting the dialogue. This will be extremely important. And other part is the strengthening. We need to work to strengthen the capacity for social partners. The union organization as well as employers organization, workers organization. This is extremely important because as I said previously, I think that it's extremely important the partners to impose the social dialogue. And this can be done only if they have the needed capacities in order to do this. Thank you.
Hvala, Edis.
Thank you, Edison, and we left Amira for last, so please, you have the floor. Can you hear me? Miss Vezagic Ramhorst? Yes, thank you. I can hear you.
Minute, really rich, precious discussion. If I had to sum up, I would say dialogue, social dialogue, but more broadly, dialogue as a public good and precious, really precious, to be nurtured on both bilateral and trilateral within the context of our economies, but also regionally. And then also what David mentioned, importance of data and research. I think for the Western Balkans, I speak this from my work, we find that there is missing benchmarking and data. And I think that dialogue and evidence is much stronger when we have data and research. And I thank you even for this opportunity because I've connected with David. Thank you.
Evo, zahvaljujem svim panelistima.
I would like to thank all the panelists and participants. In the end, we had to speed up the discussion. It always turns out that we lack time for all the things that we want to say. And what we can conclude is that research and indicators and the knowledge about the state of affairs in our region is very important. And also, it's so important to have platforms for exchange of knowledge and experience. But once that is done and provided, everyone needs to establish a model within their own state borders. We have a social model at the EU level, but within that, each country has its own social model. We need to know what we can copy and what we can do within our state borders. I would like to thank the interpreters at the booths, and I apologize for overstepping the time slot. We have coffee waiting for us outside, and we will continue
To ask the people that are still outside to come inside and start our last discussion. So they are coming. Okay. I see that we are almost all inside now. So, thank you for staying with us till the end. And thank you for the good discussions that we have yesterday and today. It was very challenging for us to put together this event. For ESC is the first event after the pandemic started. We had a lot of question marks when we started the preparation, but we have a great team at the ESC, and I would like to thank them. They are here with me and outside, so David, Tsonka, and their team, they've done a great job, and thank you so much for putting this forum together. But I think our efforts were rewarded. We also felt very welcome here in Skopje. Our president, that is still here with us in the room, she had meetings with the Prime Minister, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So your message, our message was well passed to high-level decision makers in this country. This is also was one of the reasons that we came to Skopje, because we think that, you know, we should send this message that we prize the efforts that Macedonian society, North Macedonian society, was taking lately at the political level and societal level. And of course, there were discussions about, you know, this enlargement fatigue, that we meet again, we write again a nice declaration, and, you know, the political leaders that will meet in Slovenia will not take a decision, at least in the situation of Albania and North Macedonia, to start the intergovernmental conferences and the negotiations to restart. But I mean, as I said also in the panel this morning, democracy, it's an everyday fight. You know, we are today optimistic, tomorrow we get, you know, step backs, attacks, but we should fight, because this is our mission as civil society activists. And if we're not putting pressure and get, you know, our societies, you know, to put pressure on the political level here for reforms, but also in our country, to keep the enlargement as one of the core policies of the European Commission and European Union, will not succeed. And we should believe in this. It's a dream, and we should believe and fight for it. Now, about our declaration, the president that is here with us will sign this afternoon the declaration, and will go to Ljubljana and through the town to the meeting of the no. Will send president, please.
I'm sorry. No, what we are going to do is to send this declaration this afternoon to all the stakeholders, meaning the Commission, the Council, the Presidency, as well as, of course, the Prime Minister and the Minister for Foreign Affairs here in North Macedonia. This is the plan. So it shall arrive in order also to probably influence and hopefully influence, and this I stressed also today, the final declaration of Brdo.
Thank you. So now we should finalize the document, and we received from your side some observation, and we made our best to integrate them in the text. So what I will do now, with the help of my colleagues here from the Secretariat, is to go through the text and decide about the amendments that we agreed. So you received the text yesterday, the speaker got it in advance, and we have, you know, as always, a first paragraph that it's an introductory one, and here everyone agreed with it, and basically we are again highlighting, you know, our support for enlargement process and for civil society. The first chapter is called On a Clear EU Accession Perspective for Western Balkans, and here at the point number 3 there will be, if we all agree, an addition to the text, because there was a discussion about Kosovo and the fact that it's the only country that is not part of a visa liberalization agreement. People in Kosovo, they still need a visa to travel, and we'll add at the end of the paragraph yes. So we'll add the text as well to provide for support for visa liberalization for Kosovo citizens. This is also in line with our opinions, previous opinions that we approved in ESE. Also on this chapter, here is a request from our colleagues from Serbia. We will amend the paragraph number 4 in the sense that at the second line, where we say an independent judiciary, pluralism, free and independent media, will add also free elections. This was a request from our Serbian colleagues, and if they agree, we would prefer to include it here in the paragraph 4. Now going to the next chapter on post-COVID-19 recovery, challenges and opportunities of economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans and common market. According to the you want to come back to the first chapter? Yeah. Okay. Our colleague from Montenegro would like to come back to the first chapter, please.
Yeah. I apologize, Janos, but I tried before the start to make a small intervention in item 5. It invites us to call the EU to make a plan for all countries from the Western Balkans and to integrate that in the existing mechanisms. So we wanted to add something which we consider important, which is for the administrations of our countries that deal with these processes of European integration should be involved in the monitoring of the work bodies of the European Union in order to acquire experience in discussing about important political topics. I think we think that this doesn't cost anything, but it can make a significant contribution to the understanding of our administrations, of the processes and the functioning of the European Union. I would like us to comment on that. I understood that you don't think that this could be put here, but I'm trying to understand why it cannot be put here. And if you allow me, I would like us to discuss about it in brief.
As I was consulting my colleagues, and the issue here, you're a candidate country. I mean, we cannot ask European Commission, Council, and other body to offer you the observer role to their works for a non-member state country. So it is not possible that, I mean, according to the treaty and everything, to have this status. You know, that's why we created the JCC and other bodies to include you, and that's why we are asking the European Commission delegation or Parliament or whatever officials are coming to your countries to have a separate public hearing with civil society and with NGOs and social partners. We have this in our documents, and it's important to push that. But we cannot ask, you know, for a candidate country to have this status within the bodies in Brussels. So it's purely, you know, non-issue.
I underlined, but I think you passed other points. I need to start from the beginning. In the title, we need to write the 8th Forum of CSOs and Social Partners, because in the first point, you are underlining it. Well, physically, 3, why to say 2? We are parties, we are factors. We need to state in the beginning, in a mistake which occurred in 8 forums. So it should state 8th Forum for CSOs and Social Partners. And I can lecture 1 hour as a pedagogist why should deny this. I think it's extremely important. In the first point and other points, CSOs and social partners are mentioned. Why not to be in the title? I think there is no space. There are a lot of workers and employers, and they deserve it. Thank you.
We had this discussion also with the President last night and with my colleagues when we prepared this forum. If you look to our documents in Brussels, we are talking about civil society, organized civil society, that is trade union, employer unions, and other interests. Other interests meaning NGOs, farmer organization, consumer organization, liberal professions. This is the way we work in European Union. Now, at the preparatory meeting for this forum, my colleagues from trade unions and employer associations, they asked, you know, we are discussing this, to make, you know, an adjustment for this declaration, you know, knowing that for you, you know, this civil society concept, it's linked more with NGOs, and we also specify social partners. But, you know, you want to become members of the European Union, as we understood, right? So this is the concept we work in the European Union. So don't feel that you are neglected. When we say civil society, for us it's social partners and other interests, you know? So we cannot go to the to promote this to our heads of states and to, you know, to the European Commission. They are understanding civil society with you. I mean, this is a declaration for them, not for us. And I think it's important to be understood who is who in this situation. And we agreed with my colleagues that this is, you know, the maximum that we could do, to have, you know, this in the text, to have special to refer to social partners and civil society organization. So believe us that, you know, you are not left behind, that in European Commission technocratic language, civil society is understood as trade union, employer association, and other interests. And other interests for us, it's liberal professional organization, farmers organization, consumer organization, social economy organization, and NGOs. So this is the way we work. If you look to the European Commission, you know, guidelines and everything, this is the language we use it. So we cannot use something else because they will be, you know, totally lost in this transition. So it's not that we want to highlight more one of the three parts, but this is the definitions that we work with, and I think this is the right language we should use.
Sorry. I think that this is not a legal language. In legal terms, you need to. In legal terms, requires in the lesson we will who is a civil society and who are a social partner. Why to neglect the law? This is not a good lesson when we neglect the law because of the language, and the legal parties devise them.
Because according to the European legislation and acquis, we are correct. So which legislation you are referring that we are not according to the law?
I cannot specify, but I think European. When we speak about the European law. I cannot find the law, but this is a right you need to revise. If not now, the next time. Thank you.
Boško.
Hvala lepo, samo thank you very much. I will give a brief statement. Thank you for your for accepting the intervention and for putting free elections into paragraph 4. It says without the improvement of the monitoring mechanism, it's irrelevant to expect any change. That relates to free elections. So monitoring must exist, and there must be a direct notification to our governments where they are wrong. In item 3, you emphasize zero tolerance. So the thing that we want should be doubled. I think that this zero tolerance will be valid in relation with freedom of media and so on. Thank you for accepting everything.
Now I'm going to the second chapter, post-COVID-19 recovery, and we have a proposal on the 14, a new point 14, that it's related with ILO Convention on Violence and Harassment as the working place. I think this is an important topic, having in mind that according to the data, this phenomenon is rising inside the European Union and in the region. So we gladly took on board this proposal. Then going to the next chapter on the contribution of civil society to the green agenda and the sustainable development of Western Balkans. Here the text will be the same. We didn't got here proposals that are not part of the text. And on the last one, here on the situation of civil society in the Western Balkans, here we have again some amendments. And one of the amendments, it's related with the former point 32, now 33. So it's related with the guidelines for civil society. And just a moment to read exactly the term. This was proposed in the morning in the just to add here in the gathering with NGO. So we'll add here the DGNIR guidelines and strategic direction for EU support to civil society in the enlargement region for the period 2021-2027. So this paragraph will include this reference to the guidelines, and The last point, we received an amendment, the point 36, now the point 37, when we are talking about efficient and inclusive and formal social dialogue. Here was the proposal coming from trade unions from North Macedonia, so we'll extend here the text with this formulation. If there are some other issues that I didn't mention, please let me know. No. So, yeah, please.
Mirdita, unë flut.
I am Flutur Elchavia. I come from Albania. I represent the National Business Association for Women. I'm an activist, a long-term activist. We know the environment, the situation in both Macedonia and Albania. We work in a difficult environment, difficult circumstances, but we love our country and we will work for democracy in our countries. We have a requirement because we arise the problems, there were no changes, not with our country. We had we trust EU and we continue to trust the EU, but the problems are not solving. Can we state the problems to you to say how to find solution? For example, you see about the projects, you say the projects are very a difficult part for corruption and we cannot resolve this issue very fast. Civil society organization has resolved this issue through other paths by choosing bigger partners, and the bigger ones are UK, USA, because we are included in all levels. With EU we have constraints. There is a lot of bureaucracy. To make a project, it seems like you make a FID of 70 pages. Can you ease the process? We raised this issue with ministers as well, but in all countries, is there a possibility to ease the project bureaucracies? Because you need to be aware that CSOs have no experts. We pay the experts.
With our last opinion to address us by European Commission, we asked, capacity building support for social partners and NGOs. And it was at our request some years ago when the Commission started to do these small grants administered by a local organization for NGOs and social partners that they don't have the capacity to write fancy and big project. So this is happening in all the countries now, and this was, a request that we put it forward in our document, and it was taken on board some years ago by the European Commission. It's true that it's not enough, and we still, there is a lot of room for improvement, but the process is there, and we hope that through IPA 3, more small grants, as we call it, will go through organizations to capacitate them, and the civil society movement and the funding for it, it will not be just the capital of the country business, but will go outside the capital. Yesterday, we had a very good dinner with the ambassador, EU ambassador here, and he was very proud to tell us about the European house that the European Commission started to fund in small city outside the capital, these European houses. I think this is the way we should go in order to Europeanize our countries, to go local and not to keep this process and the discussion just at the level of big organization and the capital cities. But it's a long process. It will not happen from one day to the other. I could tell you from my country that it took 2 decades to happen this. Thank you. Is there any other?
One more thing, because I haven't speak for 2 days. The reports, shadow reports are very good. You have mentioned them. what we need to make reports for our problems. One report to deliver to the government. We have used these shadow reports in a lot of topics, especially for the violence, and they are very good. And something last, with European Bank of Reconstruction and Development funds are accorded to the women entrepreneurs, but then they are allocated to someone else. For example, we received from Sweden, SIDA in Sarajevo, 5 years ago, because we have a good organization in a national level, but the regional and the worldwide level. 10 million euros we passed to IBRD, and IBRD made what they wanted. Then their function was not to be to the CSOs, but to the women entrepreneurs. And it was not, I didn't like it. I raised this question with IBRD. I spoke with the president of IBRD, because this reallocation of the funds, when SIDA awarded only for women entrepreneurs, I felt unpleasant because they were used for other problems and not for the women entrepreneurs.
They didn't manage to come to our workshop in the morning because this was one of the discussions we had about civic space and about regional cooperation and enabling environment. Thank you for your intervention. Thank you to all of you for making this effort to be here. Thank you for the people that were online. I hope we'll have the chance to meet soon, either on the JCC, Joint Consultative Committee, with our Serbian and Montenegrin friends. I hope next year we'll have the chance to have the JCC with Albania and North Macedonia. With Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are planning a fact-finding mission next year, and also with Kosovo, we are trying to see what could be done next year. So our ambition is to cover all the countries and to bring all of you in our, family, let's say. I would like to close by... David is asking me a technical issue to proclaim that the declaration is agreed by us, and it will be, as the President mentioned, taking the way forward. And thank you to all of you. Thank you for this effort, and thank you to our colleagues, local colleagues from the delegation and the Taxo office, that they were our partners. Also the regional council, that again, it was the partner. Our colleagues in Brussels from European Commission, that they supported the program, the event. To my colleagues, to you all, and to this great team that we have in ESC, and it's possible to, to organize and to have quality documents on the table to debate it. So thank you, David. Thank you, Tonka, and your team. Thank you so much. Have a nice flight, nice journey back home, and all the best. Stay safe.